So just a couple things just to throw this out here. So I'm going to talk about collaboration. So I'm throwing up the collaboration competency. That's our language for the collaboration competency, just so you know what page we're on here. I don't know that I need to read that to you, but yes, Alan?
The other day you said something about the difference between teamwork and collaboration. Could you quickly say what the difference between teamwork
So
and
this particular competency is interesting because it uses the word group in here.
Yeah.
And group is not the kind of competencies that we actually are following in the game studio. And I'll talk about that at length, but the big difference is that teams have a role that's predefined and groups don't. So the early stages of group collaboration involve getting together as a group and figuring out who's going to do what role. And that's built into this particular competency, and the framing language and everything else that we're doing for the competency. All of that is focused on group kind of interaction. So in this particular conversation, I'm going to be focusing on team collaboration. So if you look here, it says this is what came out of the game studio when we did our evaluation of the competencies. Like what do we call this?
curriculum map?
The curriculum map, right. So we found out that the students really see, and we really see, that we are actually assessing collaboration all 4 years through 5 classes, as you can see here. This is called the production sequence. So this first class is the game history and development class. It's going to be moved to a new class. Production 1, production 2, capstone we put in the fall, and then we have our senior production sequence that happens in the springtime. So the students have a whole year right here when they're seniors to be practicing all of the skills that they have been gathering over the course of their previous career here. So that's really handy. So we emphasize collaboration substantially. We teach it directly. Okay. So I've heard of other faculty doing collaboration, and I've also heard from students in said classes, and they're like, well, they just sort of throw us into the thing and don't tell us how to actually collaborate. We do our very best to get them to the space where they can learn how to collaborate. So in production 1, for example, we're teaching them specific skills of communication in small groups. Production 2, we expand that up a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll get into more detail there, but for right now, let me just show you stuff. So game development requires hard work. Just to show you how gnarly this problem is. Lots of hard work across many roles. And here's some examples of those roles. You can see I have a hard time fitting a lot of them on the screen here. I kind of ran out. This is just what I had off the top of my head of the kinds of roles that are involved in a typical game development project. So yeah, we're really talking about building something substantial. And it requires a lot of different people with a lot of different highly specialized skill sets. It's totally interdisciplinary, highly collaborative, and yeah, how do you manage all that? Right? Like, how do you do it? For one, and two, I mean, even in industry it's challenging to manage, but we're talking about an undergraduate curriculum where we're bringing people in off the street and saying, all right, go, right? I mean, how do you do this? And it gets even more complicated because, you know, you have, like, yeah, how do we manage it all? So the first hint is we team up, right? That's the big secret, the first big secret. The second big secret, of course, is we team up with each other and we team up with supporting technologies. So I want to show you some of those supporting technologies a bit later. But before I do that, I have to talk about what this whole project is like. So what is game development about? There's 3 phases, canonically. You know, I just put it in air quotes here for you. We talk about pre-production, production, and post-production. We stole those from the movie industry and then changed what they mean. So there's sequential production model. This we tossed out, okay? It's out on its ear now, thank heavens. Over 80% of the game studios who were surveyed recently in a international survey indicated that they don't use this model anymore, thank heavens, because this model is highly problematic. First problem with this particular model, sequential model for software development, is that that's not actually how we do it. This is a fiction. Actually, when we do software development, we're talking about building something that is going to be done in iterations, many small iterations. not some giant waterfall kind of model, right? And the other big irony is that the guy who came up with this picture, first published the picture, Edwin Royce, did so in the late 1970s, and he wrote an article, and he said, this is not how to do it. Okay, this is not how to write software, but all of the software managers were looking for something that they could say they did their management homework, and they found this picture, and they didn't read the rest of the article. In fact, 2 lines underneath the picture, it says, this process will lead to project failure. So for 30 years or so, software developers all over the world have been suffering at the hands of this so-called development model. In actual fact, we use something else, we use something much more effective. It's called Agile. And we, in fact, use a specialized form of Agile called Scrum. So Agile is based on the following basic values, okay? So it's individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following plan. So those of you who have ever had any experience developing software probably can resonate with why you might value the things on the left more than the things on the right. So, for example, processes and tools. I can tell you a fun story about where we had a particular tool for managing our source code, and somebody was like, I'm going to go on vacation, and right before he left, he checked out the entire tree, thus locking it and making it so nobody else could use it for the rest of the week. Enter me, because I had to go and unlock every single file administratively. Other stuff that's really entertaining, working software over comprehensive documentation. It turns out, like, stay with me here, it turns out that customers don't actually know what they want. Okay? Right? And if you give the customer a big document up front that says, ta-da, we have our plan, here's the plan, then they're going to say, oh, yes, that's a great plan. I love your plan. Go make this. And you'll be like, all right, marshal forces, let's go make it. You go make it, and you come back and they look at it after it's all found and finished, right? And they go, that's not what I wanted. And then you say, okay, more money, right? Contracts fail, I mean, what do you do? So comprehensive documentation is highly problematic. What we've done is we've streamlined documentation process to make it iterative, and we do that in the studio. We teach our students to build the document, present it to the team. Most of the documentation we talk about is team-facing. So they're going to be presenting to their team, and then they'll proceed from there and say, oh, okay, I'm going to revise that document based on the input and feedback that I got from all the stakeholders. That's a much better plan, I think. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. This goes back to the whole, well, the reason people are putting all this extra stuff in the contract is often because they don't trust you, right? The developer. How can they trust you when you're not involving them in the process? It's been 9 months since we've had a check-in, man. Like, we're freaking out over here. Why are we paying you, right? Like, just fix that trust problem by having them be directly involved. And then finally, responding to change over following plan. So, if you make a big plan up front, I think you've all done this, right? You make some big plan, and then you raise your hands. You totally followed that plan perfectly to the letter, right? Yeah, I see, I like that. That was nice, Ellen, very good. Absolutely not, right? What plan have we not deviated from when it was time to implement? Seriously, I don't know of any plan, right? Eisenhower is very famous for saying the purpose of making a plan is to, plan ahead, not necessarily to just follow through on the plan. So responding to change over following plan is very important. In software, it's even more important because you might have serendipitous discoveries, especially when you're building entertainment software, which is, we call them games. So another problem is that you have way more uncertainty early on in the process and a lot less uncertainty at the end. Now, why is that a problem? Well, actually, it's not really a problem. It's just the nature of this creature that we're talking about, building software. How do we build software? How do we build games? We start out with some big vision, and then we move on, we get some other cool stuff happening, and then we go through some narrowing here, start to funnel in with pre-production, get some prototypes done, do production, and then we go to alpha, beta, whatever, some kind of release stages. At that point, you pretty much know what you're making and yada, yada, yada. the software is so malleable and fungible that it's not like making cars, which is no longer an analogy I get to use when teaching students because car manufacturers switched to Agile. They just call it Lean. Okay? Or airplanes, which also switched to Agile. They just call it Lean.
But wasn't Lean before Agile?
They came contemporaneously. So both Lean and Agile and total quality management, all of those things came together from pretty early era in World War II. So, as you might know, during World War II, all of the guys went to go fight in a war, and all of the women were left behind. And the women were like, okay, well, we're here on the factory floor, and we need to crank out more airplanes than this factory ever could. How can we do it? And they basically invented many of the processes that we today call Agile or Lean, or total quality management. And Deming was a manager who was still stateside during the war, and he captured all the stuff that the women were doing. He's like, this is awesome, right? And he tried to sell it to the managers when they came back, and they were all like, talk to the hand, right? So he went to Japan, and they proceeded to do it, and guess what? Remember that 1980s, all these Japanese cars came in and all that stuff? Yeah, that's all a result of his going over there and saying, this is a really good way to do it, right? So, I'm kind of being loose with fast and loose there with the story, so, don't call me on that. Go look it up yourself, but that's basically the story. All right, moving on. So this is basically how Agile and Scrum work. So you set up a product backlog, and then you eventually meet with the team into a sprint set, and then you choose which ones of those parts of the product backlog you want to keep, and you work on those for a small period of time that is time boxed. Because you know what? Humans are really good at responding to deadlines. I don't know if you've noticed that, but give yourself a deadline, you actually might get it done, as opposed to like all the many projects I have in my basement. So daily scrum, sprints, and then you eventually you're at a potentially shippable game. So the whole thing is integrated right from the get-go. Not like just make a plan document today, spend 1 week on that. Next week we'll make a next thing, next thing we'll make a next thing. It's make the planning document in the first week, come up with some preliminary code to make this thing work, and then show it off during a sprint review meeting, right? Everything has to be done in that 1 week. Very important. Okay, so this is a picture, actually, of our students who are now seniors. And this is them doing their stand-up meeting in Scrum. So a stand-up meeting is where you tell each other what your status is. So like I say in the stand-up meeting, well, yesterday I fixed the movement problems we were having with the character, and today I'm going to work on rearranging the levels as a consequence of changing those metrics. Whereas the artist might be like, well, I updated the animation yesterday for those movement metrics, and today I'm going to be working on, some other piece of art. And it's very important that is framed from the context of the individual saying that, right? There's one more thing that they answer in that meeting, right? So they say what they've accomplished, and they say what they're going to do, so they make a commitment. Right? To the team. Not to the boss. Wait a minute, did you see the boss in this picture? I don't see a boss in this picture, right? We're all students. Yeah, nice, right? Yeah, I do play the role of executive producer in the game studio. But anyway, so the last thing is, are there any impediments? Is there anything blocking you? And you can totally do that. So I'm going to move along here. In case you don't know how our curriculum works, I'm going to blow through this super, super fast. 4 divisions, or 3 divisions, so hopefully, cross my fingers that first statement will be true in the future. And we have 4 majors, and we pull the different roles, producers, designers, programmers, and artists from those different majors. And we use that to make teams. So that gets back to your first question, Ellen, right? We're lucky because we secretly planned it all out, but this makes it easy for us to make teams. Very good, right? Because you already have role differentiation right from the get-go. Even with the first years, it's really clear, right? Even if they don't really know their skill set yet, they have that role differentiation, and it helps tremendously in easing frictions in what would otherwise be group collaboration. Okay, And this picture right here, I think I'm going to skip a bunch of slides after this, but basically we have these production classes, and you can see where what we actually do in terms of the phases of development. We don't get to this last phase until this point. I think at this point I want to pivot a little bit and see if we hit the escape button and switch to a more different S. So let me switch this to duplicate. Duplicate. Oh, there's the apply button. It's hiding. Yay, keep the changes. I don't even know if I'll be able to play this game. I'm really bad at this game, so does anybody want to volunteer?
It's really horrible.
We'll see if this game can even be played at this resolution. I don't think it can. Let me abort this. I'll try it again. Let me fix the resolution so it's coming out at a reasonable size here. Alright. Not that. Let's do that. Apply.
You know, blow up this machine.
I brought a special laptop just for this. Let's see if it works. Yay! Okay. Oh, that's fine. It's super tiny now. All right. Let's see if it gets to work. Okay. So this game that I'm showing you was published on Steam. Steam is a digital distribution platform last year. It was made by a team of seniors. And I'm going to turn it down a little bit because it's a bit on the loud side. So this is the beginning of the story. Yes! The dawn of the celestial pod. Alright, so... Oh wow, really? You're killing me here, guys. So... this projector is not our friend. We can try, but I think what's important isn't that the game exists and even that it's hard to play or fun. It's that it's been published, so you can see I move around and I have these cool leggy things. I don't know if I can actually do it with the controller here. We'll try. In your new body, you can do more than I ever could. You can use your abilities to save us all. I believe in you. The ship is escaping with another starfish. We can't let it get away. Use left click and right click to throw and grab with your tentacles. Let's see if yes, it is not recognizing that controller. Playing this on a touchpad, not a good plan. Alright, oh. There we go. Oh. Over here. Let's go up there. Yeah. Let's go over here. Oh. Oh no. Let's go. Get something. There we go. Like I said, I really suck at this game. So, it's a finished game, alright? And it's available on Steam, and I'm just going to show you that too, because I think that's important. Let's go do that. Steam. S-T-E-A-M. Steam powered, and then I'm going to search for
Jonathan, do you think you could estimate how many student hours were put into that?
Oh, I don't need to estimate. I was going to show you that a little bit later. I can tell you exactly how many hours it took. So this is their Steam page. It's published. You can buy it yourself and play it on your PC for $6. Yes. Right? Super fun. So, I'll zoom in on it for you just a little bit. So yeah, I mean, this is all student work. It's been published. It's out there in the world. And I asked my first years if they'd heard of this game, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I totally heard about it. It was cool. I got it. I played it. Oh, it totally killed me. It's so hard." Right? I'm like, yeah, awesome. It made something challenging. So that's pretty cool. Let's talk about how that happens. So this is Team Guam, as you see down here. It says Guam right there. And I'm going to pop over here. So this is like the senior stuff. Let's see if I can get the Guam guys. That's not it. This is it. That's it. So here, for example, is their task board. Now, before I jump into the task board, let me pull up that backlog. So now you're like, wait a minute, what's this, wait, what? So you'll notice that we have provided the students with a lot of back-end stuff, right? In addition to teaching them the steps of collaboration, right, iteratively, year by year, semester by semester, we're also providing them with a really substantial back-end tool set so that they can manage their projects in that Agile and Scrum way, right? Now, the students collectively call this thing Pineapple, because that's the name that the IS people gave it a billion years ago. That would be 10. And that's pretty neat. So what you're looking at is that backlog stack. Remember the little picture with the cards? Remember that? Maybe? Don't remember the picture of the cards? I'll bring up the picture with the cards. Picture with the cards. Let's see, that's right here. So see this stack right here? Okay. That's implemented in this software thing right here, product backlog. Okay. And then we have the team agrees on which of those particular backlog stories to bring over here into a sprint. And then they say, hey, we're going to commit to do that work in that time frame. You know, what we found out is that, with the exception possibly of the seniors, that it is most effective to set those sprints to be exactly 1 week long. Don't give them 2 weeks, right? We've found, particularly with the underclassmen, that if you give them 2 weeks, they're going to fritter the first week, think they're working, and by the time that comes around, like, oh no, right? Then they start racing for it. So we have found that it's very effective to limit that to 1 week. And that's just policy we tell the students about. They don't have to do what we're saying in terms of the class. They will probably, but, you know, depending on the year, they're seniors, it's all up to them. By the time they're done, by the time they're seniors, we want them to be fully autonomous, functioning teams, right? So the faculty are not having to intervene in the team much at all, okay? And we get there by teaching them the collaboration steps really early and providing them with a lot of help. So let's look at one of the sprints here. Here's their first sprint that they did. This was done back in January, right? And I can look at the task board here. I like opening things in new tabs. That's just like I am. So here you can see how the team managed themselves over the course of building the game that I just showed you that they proceeded to then publish. Each one of these little squares represents a task, and the tasks are assigned to individuals. Usually the individual builds their own task, right? And you can see that that's true because the name of the person is right in there. And you can go into each of these tasks and find out more detail if necessary. So it's a hierarchy of things you do. You've got a backlog, then you've got a sprint, and then inside the sprint you have tasks, and each individual is responsible for their tasks. And you just move them across this status board that says new to in progress to any condition of done, right? So that's basically one of the huge tools that we offer. Now, we also build the students into this tool over the course of their 4 years. This is the senior level. And if we dig into their wiki really quick, you can see probably like, you know, there's some interesting stuff in here, you know, yada yada. I'm not going to get in there very far. So I had a question from someone about, well, how many hours did it take for them to do this? And I can show you that. This particular game, if I click on the Spend Time tab, we require our students to log how long it takes for them to do anything. And you can see that the aggregate hours is right over here. Let me zoom in on that because this thing is cutting off the screen just a little bit. That's this one game. And I think that's low.
I.e., do you think they actually spent more time than they might not have logged
Yes, usually they end up spending more time than logging, and if we run a report on here, sometimes that can become pretty clear. If we say month, and we choose project, probably. Yeah, so just this one project. Yeah, that's the same thing. But you can also see over time what they were doing and which months were the most expensive for them hourly. So like in here, when they were racing to get their pitch done for the cut, because the way we organize it, we have a cut at the end of the capstone. So anyway, there it is. We'll move on to here. So that's just one team. And we had like 16 some odd teams last year. And I wanted to give you a sense of just how huge this kind of thing is. So here are the teams last year. And there's the total amount of time that, that the whole thing took for all of the teams. You can see right here.
So Jonathan, how many people on a team?
That totally varies. We start out with at least one member of every role, ideally, but that doesn't actually pan out because different years have different numbers of students in each program. So, like, we might have, I don't know, we'll start out in capstone with 4 people usually on the small teams, and then once they've proven out their concept, we push it to much larger teams so they can finish. So your typical team size will still be within the realm or reach of Agile and Scrum, so it's, you know, 7 plus or minus 2, sometimes 10 or so. Yeah.
What years do they use Pineapple?
All 4 years.
So, and what class do you begin to teach the collaboration?
It depends. Well, I can answer that without any kind of dependency, but the first class is game history and development, so they should be seeing it in that class and learning the tool at that point. In the Stiller School, we have a special class that's devoted for the producers specifically to familiarize themselves with this tool and the management process known as Agile and Scrum, called MGT 140. And they do a great job, you know, over time building that out. So let me get back to the presentation. Like I said, I was going to bail on the presentation, so I bailed on the presentation. I guess it's time to get back to it. So we saw that one, and we saw that one, and we sort of didn't see this one. So making teams, did that. So I talk about what happens in each of these years, and I have some artifacts I can show you. I don't know how I'm doing. Looks like I still have a couple minutes, so I might be able to show this to you. Here's some hints on how we scaffold collaboration, which is really the thing that you are here for. So I was like, ran out of time building the slide deck, sorry. So I just put them all on here. So we're just going to look at those. Organize students into teams, that's really, really helpful. Right now, if you're able to identify the students, like those of you who went to Kylie's talk last time, Kylie spent a fair amount of time talking about how to identify which students would be good in a particular group, right? And that's not something that we do a lot of, like we do a lot of it like later on in the years, but for me, because I teach a lot of first year courses, I'm just like, work with people, right? Like, here's some people, go work with them, right? So other people in other classes, like other faculty, are much more sensitive to that. So they're like, oh, I'm going to put you in this particular group and this particular group, and not these other people groups. I think it's really valuable to get a broad sense of like personalities and that kind of stuff. So that's why I do it my way. Structure works so students can iterate on everything. That's super important. If you're not, then that's mean. Right? Because like the students need to practice and they need to screw up and they need to fail. So give them an opportunity to screw up and fail. If you're just expecting them to get it right the first time, you're going to be met with lots of F's in that grade book. I totally approve of Agile and Scrum, and I wanted to mention also that the Stiller School regularly brings a certified Scrum trainer to campus, and you all can join in on that fun and get yourself Scrum certified. I'm Scrum certified, and I'm also product owner certified. And it's super awesome. It's very effective. You can use it for all manner of project management. It doesn't have to be software. So we teach our students that, and we walk them through it. we provide rapid and frequent feedback at each sprint review. So it's frequent because each sprint's only 1 week long. So the longest period of time the student's going to be sitting there going, oh, yeah, you lost, or whatever, would be 1 week if you have like 1 meeting a week. In other classes, we have 2 meetings a week, so that makes it better. But yeah, they'll give me a sprint review, they'll present the work that they've done, it's all work in progress, and I will give them my feedback right then. Won't wait to write it down, I will provide it to them that instant. And I will insist that they write it down, because that's like real life. Yeah?
Do they recognize that you're giving them feedback, and are they able to distinguish between getting feedback and getting a grade?
So that is a question that I would love to be able to answer easily. I think I tell them this is your feedback,
Yeah.
right, every time.
Yeah.
In the idea evals, they seem to recognize the distinction, right? But it's hard for me to tease that out sometimes. Directly teach collaboration skills. So things to do, like provide your students with the tools that they need to collaborate. So what tools do we have on campus, just thinking right now, this is not a rhetorical question, beside the one I just showed you, that will support collaboration in your classes?
Email.
Email is
Google
a possibility.
thing.
Google thing. What is that Google thing? I like it.
Sharing.
That's possible, right? There's lots of tools out there, right?
Whiteboard.
Whiteboard is an excellent tool, right? I mean, I see the EMC uses those a lot. And you use Post-it notes on the whiteboard for your task status. Monitor teams so that students are, in fact, collaborating. We have a term, we call it parallel play. I think we've all experienced team or group work where we have parallel play. Somebody says, I'm going to take care of X, and I'm going to take care of Y, and we never talk to each other. Right? This is super often the case in the early classes. We'll get stuff that the designer will turn in their design document, and the programmer will turn in their design document, and they don't match. I'm like, so the programmer's making a different game than the designer thinks that they're making, so needed to have that conversation, right? Require students to reflect on their work. So we make this happen by forcing the students individually to evaluate themselves and to also evaluate the team. So we have forms for that, like a team evaluation form, and it says fill in the blank for how much each person contributed to these different aspects of collaboration. Like, were they responsive? Were they timely with that sort of showing up for meetings? Did they engage in, or were they proactive? Were they, those sorts of things. Require students to reflect on their own work. That's really important also, and can occur during the sprint review, or more likely would occur during what we call a sprint retrospective, which is a follow-up meeting that the teams are supposed to have, and may or may not have. Peer evaluations are quite useful and transformative, particularly by third year. By third year, the students have suddenly, like, there's this light bulb that goes on, and they go, ching, I get it, right? Like, all of a sudden, they understand why we're putting them through these many practice iterations, and they're like, oh, right? Like, I have an impact on those around me, and it matters a lot, right? And they're very sensitive to that at that point, and they're ready to rock and roll. More hints. So, organize your teaching spaces to be collaborative spaces. I have a picture here that I couldn't easily figure out how to get into the slides, so let me just go get that picture. It's in here. Those who've been around for a long time may recognize this thing. This is David Lustgarten's work, but here you go. There's a beautiful team-oriented room in here and a couple of not team-oriented rooms. So this one would be well suited for a team. We set up our labs this way, not necessarily in this particular arrangement, but always in these pods, with sometimes 5 or sometimes 4 seats. And if you look at that, I can talk for a long time about why that's helpful. And then over here, whiteboard, this is just like one of these like Ireland rooms over here, right, with like the little tables, and you can meet at the tables. Also really effective for collaboration. When you have something like this, where the people are sitting around like this U here, not very effective for collaboration. Same thing. This one right here is designed for individual work. Usually this is set up in a lab kind of context where there are computers on this view. And a Pernicium is the total opposite of what you would want if you want collaboration to occur. The only room that I can think of on campus that's in that Pernicium design is MIC 308, I think it is. Is that right? Yeah, 308. So yeah, you know, I would. Some people like that kind of thing, but that modality is well and truly good. Okay, can I present from current slides? Is that possible? Okay, cool. So other stuff. Program-wide tools that all students are expected to learn. So we provide that, and we want them to take advantage of it. So we kind of want to standardize on it and say, do this. When you get into industry, and I tell the students this sort of thing, the tools that you will have available to will vary totally by that institution that you join. So in the case of, Game Studio X will have accumulated their own tools. It's just how it is. They might be name brand, they might not be name brand. But you need to learn how to use those tools when you get into Industry X. So Pineapple is what we call it with that version control and project management with Redmine. Google Drive is very effective for students, especially Google Docs. I have found that Google Docs can be a total lifesaver for collaboration, in particular, in my experience in online courses, right? Google Drive is a total godsend in an online course, so definitely want to use that. Google Chat. So college finally, after many requests from me, agreed to approve Google Chat as FERPA OK. So we now have Google Chat, in fact, on campus. I'll show you that in a second. Google Hangouts, also very effective. So I did a bit of research, and of course I'm just totally cherry picking my research right now. But I did a bit of research and I found out that sort of chat platforms where you're typing all the time are less effective than pretty much other modalities of communication. Right? So what are the other modalities in terms of collaboration that you could compare? It would be sort of instantaneous real-time modalities, not like delayed time like email. We'd be looking at chat, maybe voice over IP, or so like Google Hangouts where you can hear each other working, and face-to-face. And of those three, which one do you think did best? Do you think in-person did best? Yeah, that's what I thought too. I was like reading the paper, I'm like, oh yeah, in-person totally would win, absolutely. And turns out, since the task was computer-based, having the audio, not video, no video, just audio, just having the audio of the other people you're working with, just hearing them working on the same thing you're working on, increased participation focus. So they were able to get the work done faster, which is really interesting, right? That's a cool little study. Yeah?
Does that mean we need an in-house Discord server?
Oh, well, now... First of all, Discord won't be in-house anytime soon because they just decided to bring. Yes, I mean, that's Google Hangouts can do this sort of audio thing totally, and share screens and everything, and it's really effective. So this is what we have, right? Doesn't mean there are other tools out there that might be better for some reasons or whatever. It's what we have right now. This might surprise you. I teach my students how to reserve rooms, right? Because there's nowhere for them to actually meet. And it's real good practice to actually meet. We teach our students how to have what's called a meeting agenda, right? Which we all take for granted, right? But the students have no idea that even that's a thing, right? I'm speaking in first years primarily. Show students past examples of work. I just did that. You just saw a past example of work. You see how high that bar is. Right? And that helps normalize the behavior. Maintain a feedback loop from fourth year to first year. So we have senior faculty who talk to other faculty because our program is very collaborative. We all come from industry that is collaborative. And so we spend a lot of time talking to each other, right? And I'm really happy about the physical location of all of the faculty being close together. So we can just pop into each other's offices and go, oh, I had this strategy in my class and I tried it out this year and it totally worked, or it totally failed, it tanked horribly, like next time, that sort of thing. Weekly sprints, I already mentioned that, no longer than that. So some other examples, just so you can see like where we are. Here's a video from first year. Jesus was 2 years ago already. Let's see if this works.
Screen, so then you tap to continue. And then it'll ask you if you want to complete a daily log. So we'll say yes. And the first question, how are you doing today? So it's rated on a scale of 1 to 10, and you'll pick how you're doing. So we'll say 1. What are you struggling with? So then you'll pick the one that's most closely related to your obstacle for the day. Just say stress or multiple. And then which animal would you like today? We'll pick a cat. And it goes to...
Rotate, okay.
Yeah. So now you'll click on a border of, we call it the blob. So you'll click on the border of the blob and you swipe your finger. So then it'll go into the battle screen. And so just a quick simulation of the battle. These have drop-down menus. So then, like your health is going to be at 20 hit points, and you get the first move. So we'll do claw. So then the cat will attack the blob first. So it did 7 damage, then the enemy has 23 health left. And then they'll attack. They used smother. So then you lost 4 hit points. So now you have 16. And it'll just keep going back and forth until hopefully your avatar will defeat the blob first before they get to you. But if you do happen to be, if you have no potions and you're running low, you can flee. So there is no penalty, you'll just have to restart the battle. And you begin every battle with full health. So then it would go back to that screen once you completed, and the section that you were fighting for will be empty. So you would reclaim that. But if you lose, then that territory will stay claimed as well as an adjacent one. And then you'll also lose 5 points, which will get you, points get you upgrades, and then experience helps you to level up. But then another screen you can see just to how you did today. It has your survey answers, and then if you've earned any trophies, like you've logged for 10 consecutive days, and then you can write notes to yourself.
So that's a game that I asked the first years to make. Wrong button. To prototype. So I'm like, I just want you to prototype something. And the thing that's really important is that I ask them to do something that is going to address a social or cultural pill. So in this particular game, the designers decided to pursue something that addresses the frustration of illness, like straight up. So you saw how that would work as a sort of app on your phone. Game production 1, right? Here's a pretty entertaining little video about that. If we still have time, we're still good for time? Okay. So this game, you basically want to help rescue Bill and rage against the machine of demonic bureaucracy, right? The Adventures of Bill and Larry, The Reign of Lamont. So I video recorded this on my own mobile device, and let's see how it works. There's actually audio, but it's quiet right now. Notice the reference to waterfall in there? Not an accident.
This is so meta for second year student. Is it second year or third year?
Yeah, second year.
So there I was, carrying Dunkin' Donuts and blocks of Joe down Curry Street, trying to miss 2 modes of transportation to my place of employment. That's me, Larry Philp, office drug extraordinaire. Man, Monday's right. I come back to the office, look up, expecting the dull slate gray and pale windows to stare me down like always. Instead, I find myself at the foot of a demon temple. Clock eyes of the gargoyles really blood. Margaret from PR, sporting a gaping chest wound, tumbles down the steps, followed by Tony from sales. I never cared for Margaret. You should have known Mr. Fitzgerald was summoning demons. I ignored all the warning signs and terrible dental planning. Usually defer to bonuses. Take a long sigh, look at my watch. Shit. We lose the meeting in 5 minutes. This will be time to burn my calves and start sprinting. Looks like he's in the back of the line. All those days taking the stairs are gonna pay off.
So it's tilt to move. Your job is just to tilt and avoid.
Grab the coffee.
Get the copies, yeah. You want to get
Coffee is
copies make you go faster. Red stapler.
This apathy test and speed.
They did this in a semester.
This is a 3-week project.
3 weeks?
3 weeks.
Really impressive.
3 or 4 weeks, yeah. This is the last project of their production 1 class. I think that's right. Might be the middle one.
So Jonathan, going back to Ellen's questions, team and collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to see if I'm seeing this right. So I'm thinking of team as sort of like individuals that are needed, like for example, a programmer, a designer, etc. And the collaboration is how you make sure that those individuals actually keep themselves abreast or interacting with the role that they're playing in the team and the product that they're creating.
Yeah, so everybody on the team needs to know their role. And then once they've got their role nailed down, so the first 2 years we work really hard with the students to teach them their role. So that role education occurs outside of the production context much of the time. And then in the production context, they learn how to engage with the team. So they're concerned with, and we teach them things about how to be effective communicators on teams, how to interact with other human beings, how not to be a jerk, stuff like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think so, yes.
Yes, you can teach that. Those are skills, actually. They're skills. Apparently, I can't figure out how to advance the next slide without what happened here. No, I want to not be in this. There we go. Okay. So game production 2 in here. What is this button?
You got 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes. Okay. So production 2. I'm gonna skip this one. 2D games to 3D games in their junior year. And this was a game that was built around the fad of planking. So you're a planker and you have to avoid the cops. Okay, maybe I won't skip it. But anyway, I can show you that at some point, but that one's a pretty entertaining one. And then college capstone, this is the guy who designed the game about Raina Blamak as a senior. So, pretty awesome. And they're having a conversation with their faculty member there. This is a picture of what happens at the mid of the senior year. They make a pitch, and how do you do that pitch? This was a totally hilarious thing. We have a more hilarious one that I can show you too, and then here's the trailer for this Dan Shredder in Hellzone, which was a really entertaining game.
What's wrong? Psyche defuse your guitar. Target enemies by striking underground poses. Download to the layers catalog. Can you defeat the greatest team in the world? Get Shredder and Hellzone!
Isn't that fun? Oh, that's great. No, I don't want to watch it again. Alright, so anyways, it's making us watch it again. There we go. End of presentation. Yay. So, questions?
I have a question, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So, how particularly do you get your programmers to divide their responsibilities? When you have teams that have people that have distinct roles, like the artists, and the producers, and the programmers, it's a little bit easier to see what each person should be responsible for. But with computer science classes, it's everyone has theoretically the ability to do all of the things.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get them to separate that out?
So that's where the sort of group collaboration happens, when you got two programmers and they need to figure out what they want to do. So in game development, we will often have actually totally clear roles for the programmers, because there's different sorts of game development for programmers. Does that make sense? So a programmer might be using a commercial engine, for example, like Unity or Unreal Engine, and you need to build tools. So one person might be like, I'm going to make tools to make the life of the team way easier, and they go and they do that for much of the semester. And the other programmer might then become the gameplay programmer, a person who's actually building the systems that the team has designed for that particular game. It has happened, but it's generally rare for undergraduate programs for students to be really building the fundamental systems of the game engine. Usually we pull a game engine that already exists in and then modify it as needed for the support of the game. Did that answer your question?
I think it did. I think it doesn't really help with the things that I have them do group projects on.
Right. I mean, I would break it down into the different parts, so I have a really clear outline of the parts that need to be delivered, and then say, choose one of those, like top level pieces. Josh.
Yeah, same question, largely that Lisa asked, is it seems like so much happened in the program design in terms of the landscaping of creating space for the group work and creating a space for mastery of the content. So
Yes.
taking those two out. I was just thinking about the CSI courses, and it was you either have to partner across courses, so a database course partnered with a web design course across, which would be really hard to coordinate, almost impossible, or something, because often what you don't want is people to only learn their role, right, on the team and not learn about the other things if they need to learn about all the other things. Your advantage is, if you're game art, you need to know so much game, design, but not that much. So
Yes.
you can segment.
That's correct. So we have very clear specialization. If you're trying to teach everybody to be a competent programmer across the board without that level of specialization, then it makes the interdisciplinary thing a lot more difficult. So yeah, absolutely. Different challenge. Yes?
Does Pineapple talk to Gmail?
Pineapple talks to Google. Yeah, we send emails from Pineapple. What do you mean?
So if there's a task or there's a comment or whatever,
Yes, that gets sent in through emails.
it gets sent through email.
Yep. Yeah, one of the activities I was toying with but realized we didn't actually have computers in this room was to make you all join a project, and then you would see how that works. Every time you move one of those tasks on the task board, let me pull that up really quick here.
So why are we spending money at a college level on outside vendor fees when would this work just as well?
I don't know to that which you speak, so we
Asana or Asana, however you
Asana's
want to
almost free.
right. So the various
It's $7 per person per month.
Whoa.
It's not free.
Not free. So you absolutely are welcome to use this tool. I've invited everybody I know to use this tool. It is officially now supported by IS. It took me a long, long time to get that to happen, but now it's.
So how do you get onto this tool just to even play with it?
You just sign on. You go to pineapple.champlain.edu in a browser like this. You just type it in. You can do it on your phone too. It works really well on phones now.
And this is open source?
Yes, it is. It is open source, free software. We've made substantial modifications to it. So what you see here is not what you see if you go to the official site for Redmine, which is this one. We have extensive so that's just the master site. Let me change my resolution again. This is ridiculous. I can't see anything. How about this one? Okay. Okay.
I think in order to log in, you can log into it, but you may not be on any project.
Oh no, when you very first time you log in, it will construct a project for you by default.
Your own master.
You have your very own project, and you can play with your project. Do whatever you want. You can make more projects underneath your project by default.
And it's a collaborative tool, so everybody can see.
Everybody can see. Yes, it is a collaborative tool, so it's organized and designed in the notion that the people on the team will be able to see each other's work very much. So you're not constantly being bombarded with the so-and-so has trying to share this thing with you, whatever, right? You can fix that with a shared folder on Google, but the fact is that this kind of thing is way, 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 way past, in certain respects, what Google can offer you. So let me give you a little example. Let's take a game engine called Unity. If I open up Unity and save a project with nothing in it, okay, like just brand new, open it up, it's like I open up Word and then I save the document and close it, right? No, nothing written down. Okay, if I do that in Word, I'll get a 4K file, one 4K file, right? If I do that in Unity, I'll get 1,082 some odd files that take up more than 37 megabytes. And that's just a basic default project. So you're like, what's going on, right? And that's when you need to have substantially more powerful tools to manage all those files. And that's a talk that Josh has asked me to give on how we do version control.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get too far down that road, but I want to kind of point out that there are substantially more sophisticated tools available when you want to do version control. I can show you a project on here, for example. I'm like supposed to be out of time. Is that the out of time side?
No, I was just thinking about, well, in our office, we started using Trello, just for a very simple, start, in process, done. And then,
Trello is fine. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to go say you have to use this. That would be ridiculous, right?
I'm just,
There are advantages to this tool in terms of our teaching. One advantage is it's FERPA okay because we host it locally.
Yeah.
So you can actually maintain or engage in actual conversation with the student on this tool. Other tools like GitHub, they're not FERPA. Even the education site that GitHub is offering for educators specifically is also not FERPA approved. Okay. Some of the development faculty use a online place for programmers that's really cool. That is FERPA approved. But I mean, when you start looking at the education landscape and what businesses use and what we can use, it falls off real fast because you can't use the cloud providers, unless it's completely private. And then you have this other problem because back in 2010, when we started doing this sort of thing with a cloud provider, I was the reason that we had to upgrade our internet. Because my class would convene at 12:30 in the afternoon and nobody could watch any more YouTube videos, right? Because we use so much bandwidth it will make your head spin. Terabytes a day. Yeah.
But I think the other fundamental thing is the tool you picked is built for the style of teamwork you do.
Right.
Yes, this is a role-based tool.
It's a role-based tool with
Yep.
an agile approach. It supports
Yeah.
great-
Well, we built the agile approaches into it. Yes.
but it lends itself to that. And so I think it's a matter of understanding what are the projects you need and the scope.
Right.
At one point, we had a base camp license as a college.
Yeah, we
I
got.
would not recommend it.
No.
Don't. It's not useful.
Don't use it.
That was base camp.
And
We tried.
so I think, last conversation I had with Jeff Brown, he was looking into something else as a tool to provide departments. And I don't know yet, but there's this also. There's Trello. There's a couple out there that people use, and you really just need to figure out your scope and what fits. But this is definitely one people should look at.
Yeah.
Especially if you got technically savvy team.
Well,
Right.
especially if you're talking about tasks that you could get, like finance people involved
Mhm.
and different departments that aren't necessarily right here on campus, that you're working with something. so
Right.
that
This
you
is
can-
available to anyone. Right. It's locally hosted, like I said. Anybody at the college with a MyMail or whatever Champlain EDU. If you can log into a Champlain thing, you can log into this.
But can this just be kind of task oriented?
Absolutely. You can have it just be task oriented.
Not so much role, but just task.
Yep, you can totally do that. The role thing, the permissions model for this system is role-based, but you can just have issues, for example. I don't have issues at all. But these issues right here, you can just have people work through the issues, right? And these would be qualified as, various kinds of tasks. And you can see that I have category task, category story for the tracker type. So yeah, you can totally work that way.
Could this do curriculum?
Could this do curriculum? You could represent a curriculum in a way you could. I don't want to go there because we have Curriculog, and I know Cheryl, and Cheryl did a ton of work to make that happen. And
Yes, but you can't be saying that in 4 years from now and say, well, I know Cheryl, she worked here about 12 years ago and gotta move.
so, more questions? No questions. All done. Yeah.
Just, it goes along your question about how it's integrated with email. Is it just sending notifications, like whenever somebody does something?
By default, that's the case. I actually.
You can comment on issues and people can see the tracking, but it's not, like you had some integration with chat where you're moving toward that, right?
Right. So, for example, one of the things I teach our students is how to build their Google Calendar out. And Pineapple has a special plugin. You go away. That allows you to set up a meeting in your Google Calendar just by clicking a button, and it will go ahead and fill in some of the parts of this for you. For those of you who are we still video recording? Because I don't want my calendar to show up in your video.
I don't want to have your face.
Okay. So if I show you the calendar, my calendar right here, you can see how absurd it is. But I require all of my students to build their calendar out. And at a minimum, they have to have their classes in the calendar. And the reason for that is so that when they get together to do the collaborative work, you say, okay, write down your contact information, set up your calendars, figure out when you're going to meet, right? That's really, really important. So when we look at that, that's been really vital. So I could pull up one of my students' calendars, and I should be able to see that they are actually populated. Of course, they may or may not have followed through with that request, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing, if you look at the, one of the contact pages for, say, a first-year project, we require the first years to write down on the wiki their contact information. Go to this one, it doesn't matter how old it is. If I go into overview and pop into one of the sub-projects.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, there is Gantt chart. It's read-only on purpose because you're building your tasks or issues a different way. But yeah, if you look at the wiki here, we can see contact info right here. There's a whole page on it, and you can see all the people. So these are all seniors at this point. So that pretty much should you know, help you understand like some of the scaffolding we do. Right? Yes, at the program level, right from the get-go. Yes.
I was going to point out the one that you have up currently
Mhm.
is, it looks like sprints on a project, but the projects are largely look reflective. As a programmer, I want to make tools to make development something.
Oh, the stories you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, these are all stories, and they're, you know, I let the students, they're supposed to write good, well-framed stories, but they're not always good, well-framed stories. In an ideal case, a story will mean that you have one person or more on the team who can address an aspect of the story. So the story is fundamentally interdisciplinary. So it's not like put wheels on the car, right? It's like someone's going to need to build the engine, someone's going to build the windshield, someone's going to build the wheels, you know, and then they're going to plug it all together. That's a terrible example, but yeah. Does that make more sense?
Like there has to be enough detail in the story for.
It actually has to be broad enough, right? So we pulled the detail out. You just need to make it so that it has the right format. Let me show you an example
Can you
of
dig into a story? So the
what
story.
a story should have in it. So if I wanted to make a story from scratch, I'm just going to go into my personal project here, which all of you have your own if you log into Pineapple. It might take a minute for it to construct the repositories. I don't have an animation for that, so it'll just happen. So, for example, I hover over this little box right here, and I choose New Story. And when I do that, it'll create a template story for me. And I'm going to zoom in on that so you can all read it. Oh, that's too much zooming in. Maybe make this little box bigger. All right, so it says, as a type of user, I want some goal, so that's some reason. That's your fundamental framework for a story. And that's really easy to memorize and use. So that's why Scrum and Agile use stories. The other reason that they use stories is because the idea that you can communicate effectively with the stakeholders beyond just your team is really vital. So in an ideal sort of universe, the executive producer who is running 5 other projects can drop in on your project just unannounced and go, let me see what's going on and check out the backlog and the sprints and the task board and see exactly where you are progress-wise. And this is important because it's an information radiator. And it's also important from an educator's point of view because it allows us to see inside the team, right? Which I kind of buried the lead there. It's like the last minute of my presentation, and you know, that's one of the biggest motivations that I had in putting this whole thing together back in 2010. So build your stories, and then you see the students work on it, how many hours they spent, what comments they made while they were doing the work, what changes happened, all that stuff.
What's up Dropbox with story? What other?
Oh, there are other trackers. By default, this will choose story, which is what it should do. There are bugs and feature stories as well, but just a regular story is fine. And then we have an ability to do what's called story point estimation, and there's a whole card game that's associated with that.
Is the templating there, the autofill, the template for each type, is that new, like relatively new?
I deployed that last year. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, stop by anytime. There's one other thing I wanted to mention that's like more tuned into what Alan's into. So, you know, programs need to keep track of the stuff their students make. And why do we want to do that? Well, we want to do that for long-term assessment. So we have some pretty awesome stuff here. I'm able to track material all the way back from 2009, 2010, and allow other students to see that, and let other faculty see that. So these are all the senior game projects as finished from 2009 and 10 till today, which is pretty awesome. And we update that once a year for the new project. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for lunch, COT.
Yes, thank you. I have to grab a little bit more of that tasty. Actually, there was a pretty interesting idea about like how would you get people to collaborate, but like them to learn all the skills they need. What if it was like cross years? So you had like the mobile dev class working with like a databases class, and like person from different levels to kind of like.
Databases next thing I did, and I'm like, I thought about building like a lightweight web server, but I'm like, I don't want them to learn HTML and JavaScript. I can't have them something like that. I'll never get anything done. But I could make them write an API, right? Where it's an API that has a database backend, and they just write the backend, and someone else writes the front, right?
Jonathan, can we make you a late before?
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
Classes where they have to agree to negotiate on their public API, and then they go all have to hold up their ends of the bargain.
Do you want some salad with some chickpeas?
So that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah. The pizza's veggie, yes.
That's good to try stuff.
So,
Yes, sir.
It's like the worst nightmare always is just like, oh, here programmers do a group project, and then they're like,
effectively helping us.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, I don't know what
like
the
I want you to
project
work with
was.
each other.
Well, doing inventory on our.
Oh, Lassie? Yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah.